I spent all my spare time in the woods, hunting, fishing, exploring, Ford trackers, snowmobiles, mountain bikes, horses, hiking. Western Montana at that time was a paradise for wildlife. Moose, mountain goat, bighorn sheep, mule deer, elk, grouse. And then everything changed. One of our favorite things to do was go elk and deer shed hunting in the spring, and we'd basically just follow the snow line up, see what was under there, look for sheds. And at some point, we just started finding carcasses. I first ran into you in the town square in Jackson, Wyoming in 2010. The Wyoming Outfitters attempt to let the world know what was happening. And people from all over the region there. You were there with your video camera. I was there with mine. People were angry. People were grief-stricken. Grown men crying on the stage.
Yeah.
Living with wolves means living with death and terror. And now it's been 30 years, Scott.
All the people that used to live off basically the wildlife, and their whole life was built around what Montana is, and their entire careers, their businesses shut down, gone.
Right.
It's all gone. Not to mention our cultural heritage. It's a shame.
The mules are gone. The pack horses are gone. The outfitters are gone.
Yeah.
And they really destroyed a national treasure.
They did, and they wholesaled it. It was like the elk meant nothing. It was just food for their wolves. And at the time, if you were to get caught poaching an elk in 2006, I think the value was about $8,000 that you would be fined. That's what they estimated because of the economic impact it would have on the community.
Right, that was the.
Well, think of the thousands of elk that are gone now. They're,
right.
It's, you can't calculate it. It's incalculable.
It's incalculable. You are one of the few people on an individual basis that flew over Yellowstone and counted the northern Yellowstone elk herd.
Yeah, I did a lot of crazy stuff in the last 20 years.
Yeah.
About wolves, and it seems insane now. I look back at what I did, and I can't believe I did those things. I think I put 140,000 miles on my truck. I spent every waking moment filming wherever I could film, and because at that time, the narrative was balance of nature, and only the alpha and the omega bred. And I'd already seen what they do, and I said, this is crap. It's a lie. And so I just took to the camera and let the camera do the talking.
Well, one thing that I discovered, I was working for local media, and I had gone on a Chamber of Commerce bus ride up to Garnett Ghost Town, and the speaker for the day was the gentleman that the family that owned Pyramid Mountain Lumber up in Seeley Lake, and he gave us a tour around Garnett Ghost Town and showed how they'd used their logging equipment to take out the beetle kill and the disease bits that needed to come out without disturbing any of the sensitive parts. And so we're on this bus, a bunch of us from town, and a gentleman that was with a not-for-profit corporation was clearly somebody on the sales team, and he was on the bus. And he was just talking about how filing suit and how much they're getting paid for their attorney's fees and for damages. And, really, it was the first inkling I even had that there was a cottage
Equal Access
industry.
to Justice Act.
Yeah. So I actually started printing out their lawsuits. And, I found Karen Budd Phelan's work, where she and her team had gone in and just found billions of dollars. I mean, they were Doge before Doge was hot.
Yeah, right. They were.
And found just billions of dollars that you had to dig for. They don't just post it up on their website, but all the improvements to the forest and so on that they should have been making just went into the coffers of
NGOs.
NGOs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The problem with it's the system. The system is created that way.
Yes.
So if you're an attorney, whatever side you're on, you're going to make money off the system, and that's maybe good in some instances, but most times it's bad. They're just they're raping the coffers of the American people.
Right. Well, it's definitely a cottage industry, but the cost to the local people, to the wildlife, to our way of life, the prices has been staggering.
Prior to wolf introduction, the town of Gardner, Montana, had 50,000 photographers and videographers that would show up every year after the tourist season just to film the wildlife. Not, when I say wildlife, I mean elk, moose, deer, bighorn sheep, and the goats.
Right.
Then they introduced wolves, and of course there was a lot of people that came in for the wolves, and then that was cool for a minute, and then there's no one now. The entire town is dead. Yeah. So you get your 2 million people a year that go into Yellowstone, but they're passing through, they're buying water. You know, they're not spending money at the hotel or the restaurants. They're going
not
through.
Renting rooms.
Right. And so the economic impact from the stupid thinking, whether it be logging thinking or, you know, land management or wildlife management, it's all garbage.
Well, we referred to it back then as the War on the West.
It was.
Bruce Babbitt and the Department of the Interior, all the way from Randy Weaver to, I mean, they were some scary times, Scott.
Their intent was to drive 30,000 ranchers off public land grazing allotments. And that was the original. And the one thing that our side didn't learn was how to get along and go with the same plan to beat them. Those folks all had their own agenda. Right. They just incorporated their agenda into the main agenda, and some people wanted money, some people wanted to earn money off of the Endangered Species Act by studying wildlife, and then of course lawyers, you know.
Oh yeah.
So it had nothing to do with the people or the people's resources or public land. It had everything to do with, like you said, a cottage industry.
Yeah, it's definitely a job creator.
Yeah. Well, I think it's gone now.
It's gone, and in its place are just, you know, we just aren't as happy a people as we used to be.
No.
And I think a group of 10 not-for-profit corporations have filed suit again in Judge Malloy's court to get wolves put back on the endangered species list, because Montana and Idaho and all of our hunting is just too hard on the wolf population.
Well, if you look at the simple biology of wolves, there's not enough protein biomass to feed them. And so they're going to decline whether or not we hunt them or not.
That's right.
And then they may decline here where we're at now, but in Missoula, they may do just fine.
Right.
But it has nothing to do with science, because if the scientists were real, they say, hey, there's no place in settled landscapes where wolves belong. That's the reality. There's no place in the United States that's not settled. You know, maybe places like Yellowstone or maybe Glacier, but if you go through Glacier or Yellowstone, I just was in Yellowstone last weekend. I didn't see anything. 35 bison, that's it, period. Wow. So what's their goal? I think they're jealous, or they're mad, or they just don't like human beings.
Right. I think all of those things, you know, they're definitely they are not humankind lovers that want us to have an abundant environment to live in.
What would be the ideal for any of us that grew up in the West? Our ideal way of living is to live off the land, whether we fish or hunt. And then we can feed our families. It's relatively inexpensive, and we can get along pretty good. If you grew up in the East Coast, they have no concept of that.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, there's a lot of hunters back east,
Right.
but this is the way of life here. And the people that are against us hate that way of life
They do
because
hate
we're
it.
self-sustainable.
Mm-hmm.
We can live and live off the land, and we know what's going on. It's just wild that we let them do that to us.
Well, do you remember a lady named Rosa Kiori?
Yeah.
Democrats against Agenda 21.
Yeah.
Yeah, she was quite a lady. And, she pointed out places in their little United Nations plan for rewilding the West. And part of it is you get all the people with their guns out of there and their cows. And, so they deliberately set out to do what they did.
Yeah. In 2010, I was contacted by a woman out of Chalice. I think she was Haley, Idaho. And I can't say her name to this. She's passed away long since. She just said, "You need to promise you'll never tell who
Oh,
gave you
yeah,
this
sure.
information." And she sent me their plan in a book form. That when she went to their conference, they were handing out these binders full of the information how to stop grazing on public lands, hunting, how to kill it. Basically, everything that happened to us, that blueprint, she gave it to me.
Exactly.
And I go, here we go. Here's proof. And it fell on deaf ears. So all the people that were supposed to, tell the truth of what's going on, they never told anybody anything. So when you don't say the truth, it doesn't mean
Mm-hmm.
that it didn't happen. They just won't tell us.
Right, right.
So that's why, I put a lot of that stuff out there on video so I could show the people that Agenda 21 is a real deal. It's not
Oh,
a conspiracy
absolutely.
theory.
They publish their books. The United Nations, I remember signs from growing up back in the 50s, get US out of the UN. And a lot of this stuff comes right out of the United Nations.
Oh, yeah.
And then it gets implemented, throughout our bureaucracies at every level.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate that more people don't pay attention to it, but I think I tried to do some study on this about what human nature is with respect to what the overall good is for the public. And most of the time, people don't care. I mean, it doesn't matter if you're talking about 1829. Most of the people really didn't care.
Yeah.
It was only a few people that fought. Like in the revolution, it was 2%, 3% of the population fought. And that's the same as it is now.
Well,
But we have propaganda now, more so than they did then.
right. Social media has made a huge difference, and just the ability for people to talk to each other. You worked out of Idaho. I was in Montana.
Yeah.
How did you get to know Jim Beers?
I was asked to film Jim Beers by Bob Fanning when we did the conference to show where the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service stole $70 million. So I spent 3 days with him at Bob Fanning's house and intimate interviews with him to get to know what really happened.
I see.
Yeah.
So Jim Beers worked for the federal government.
U.S. Fish and Wildlife Chief. Yep.
And he was a law enforcement. He was in the law enforcement at the time that Congress noticed that $40 to $60 million was missing from the Pittman-Robertson Fund, which is an excise tax that is supposed to go directly to fish and game departments in the various states. It's not really for the feds to just use on pet projects. But Conrad Burns was a Montana senator at that time, or he was a representative, and he and others made sure that there was no money appropriated to bring in wolves.
Yeah.
But they wanted to go up to Canada. They went to Alberta in 95 and up to British Columbia in 96. And at that time, Defenders of Wildlife, a not-for-profit corporation, gave them some money. But what they also did was just took $40 to $60 million right out of the Pittman-Robertson Fund and used it to bring in a non-native species of wolf?
They first did it when they stole the money. It was first to ensure that a very powerful senator's daughter had a position in California in their own U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service office. They didn't have one in California at the time, and that was the purpose of it. And then it was a slush fund, so everybody started coming to them for the money.
I see.
And so I filed FOIA requests, which is freedom of information requests, for the better part of 15 years and dug into it, the whole Canadian wolf introduction thing.
Right.
The first thing that they did was they tried to do it in Colorado. And Colorado was on the crosshairs. Nobody else was, because it was considered a little more liberal and more accepting. So they did use a relatively new department called Human Dimensions to sample what the public liked, what the public would accept. And once they did that, they figured out that Colorado was accepting a wolf, so they tried to run it through, and Congress said absolutely not, because of California, or excuse me, Colorado at that time was very powerful, and they weren't accepting. So once that ended, they went right to Idaho, and they came up to Idaho, Montana, and Wyoming, held these very, very weak public hearings, but they established that they did it, and that's the requirement to do it.
Requirement.
And then they just shoved it down our throats. But that money was used to pay for the venues and the speakers and everybody that was there for those meetings. And then when I discovered that so the whole idea that they went to Alberta first and then BC, is not exactly true. So that's what we've been told, right? And we read.
That's what Ed Bangs said in an interview.
Yeah. So Ed Bangs, he's a liar. When I got the FOIA request, I got the FOIA request not from the United States government. I got it from Canada. So I got all the vet records from the 66 wolves that were introduced from BC, which is in an area where the wolves are the most aggressive, most prolific breeders. They're actually, in the wolf breed, it's one of the worst ones there are. I hypothesize that wolf breed is half sled dog. That's why it can run and has the stamina of a sled dog. It's wild, but it's a whole different conversation altogether. But they had so much money that they just threw it around, and it's hard to put your finger on what they did. But you can go to the part where Jim Beers, and he located where they stole 70. I think it was upwards of 70 million when he finally got done doing the work. But even if it's 40 million, it's too much.
Well, and it ended just the way the rest of the government corruption has ended over the last,
in our lifetime.
In our lifetime.
Yeah.
And that's that absolutely nothing happened.
And there's no one accountable. It's just like what's going on now. There's no one accountable. Our entire economies that relied on wildlife, it doesn't matter if you're hunting. There's the whole economy of the Sunday driver going up the highway to go look at the wildlife on the weekends. That's gone.
Right.
You're not going to drive from here 50 miles up the road to look at nothing. It's a shame.
One of the first casualties of the wolf was the native timber wolf that was in Yellowstone and had its own community, and people watched them, and those poor wolves were shredded, and they're gone forever. Now they are extinct.
100% extinct. They were the first to go. I think even before they started attacking wolves and livestock, they were killing the wolves, or native wolves. I got my hands on the records from Park County from 1895, a 50-year period, through Bob Fanning. And that book, it's a document of the government, showed where they paid wolf trappers and hunters that killed all the predators that they want gone. In a 50-year period, they only killed 50 wolves. So that kind of establishes what the carrying capacity of Yellowstone would be, Yellowstone or the Park County area, because they didn't have extreme densities of wolves. They really didn't. The Canis lupus eremotus was a very quiet animal. It would kill. Yes, it would do its thing, but it had like maybe 2 or 3 pups. It kind of did its thing, and it had its own balance in itself.
Right.
So Ed Bangs and I believe he was the bat biologist. The bureaucrat decided to go to Canada to get our wolves when he could have, if he wanted to do a real comparison, he could have went to Minnesota and got a wolf that was a little closer to what our breed was.
Right.
But the thing is, I interviewed the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service guy that counted the wolves in northwest Montana. He counted 47 wolves. There were 2 women that were charged to count the wolves in Idaho, and that was the linchpin. So if Idaho had wolves, it would have stopped the whole thing. So,
right.
But those 2 women were given a 2-wheel drive Dodge pickup to go into the mountains of Idaho in the sawtooths and find wolves.
Have a little look
and they
around.
never left the pavement. The only time they did leave the pavement, was sorry, cut. The only time they did leave the
stop through these rapids too.
The only time they did leave the pavement, a friend of mine's an outfitter found them, and they were lost in the woods. So they didn't find wolves. Ben, the guy up in northwest Montana, he found 47. That should have stopped the whole thing. But their intent was not just to. Their intent was to bring wolves here.
Oh yeah.
And when we asked Ed Bangs, he said, "We want a really aggressive wolf that's going to kill elk as fast as possible."
They deliberately went up there and got, the biggest, most aggressive wolves they could find.
And it is.
And
that breed of wolf is known. McKenzie Valley wolves are known everywhere as one of the most aggressive wolves. Well, is the most aggressive wolf.
I had my video camera, and somebody told me that there was a paving crew up the Rattlesnake, which is a creek that runs into Missoula. And this paving crew looked up on our city park, which is Mount Jumbo, a giant mountain that was covered with mule deer. And they looked up and saw 16 wolves. And it's along the hiking trail where all the little school kids hike up to the elk. But it didn't take long, and there's no deer up there anymore. There's no deer up there at all.
No elk. No. I went when I started filming to prove. It's very difficult to go out there in the public and not prove. You can say whatever you want to say, but you have to prove it. So I took to the camera and started filming. And so in my footage, I had 400 hours of footage of wolves killing things.
Yeah.
And in Yellowstone, or just outside of Yellowstone, Big Sky, 11 wolves killed 90 bull bachelor elk in 30 days. No one else has it. Well, I would say no one else has that footage, but that's not true. Because Nat Geo filmed the same stuff I was filming. And I was lucky enough to have like a network of people that were sending me footage. So I had all this footage sent to me, and I'd put it together and put it out on the internet. But the Nat Geo and Discovery Channel, all those people that were supposed to tell us what's going on, were lying to us the whole time. They had staff camera people and staff reporters at the park at all times. They didn't tell any of us for 20 years. It wasn't until I shamed them. I remember I was standing outside the park with Bob Fanning, not outside the park, because at Mammoth Hot Springs, and Doug Smith was giving an interview. We're mortal enemies, and he was giving this interview of how wonderful the wolf. It was like one of those anniversaries where everything was so grand that they couldn't believe it. Mm-hmm. And Bob Fanning and I both looked at him, pointed our finger at him, and said, "You're a liar. You know what's going on, and you're not telling the public." And he looks down at his feet, kind of moves the gravel around underneath his feet, and he goes, "Well, it's my job." Yeah. And we're like, "What the heck?"
No, I mean, these people get paid by the hour, Scott.
I think he was at that time, it was like $106,000 a year. And the more people he got under him, the more money he made. So he built an empire. Right. And then that empire grew into this whole wolf thing that's happening now. And these guys all retire off that. So 30 years goes by, he's gone, all the elk are gone. Now they're going to figure out what happened to the elk. That's going to be the new thing.
Well, it's a new study they're going to have to do, you know, because nobody can know for sure.
No, we just don't know. And
That's
like Ed Bangs always says, like it's all the same dog. That's one thing he always said that bugged the heck out of me. It was, it's not. The dog you brought us was hell. Hell on. It was hell. That dog was bad, and Canis lupus erymotus was not that bad.
right. It didn't run in packs.
No, we had them. We had them in North Idaho, Central Idaho. We had them in Montana. We had them everywhere. And Keith. So here's another real key here. So Keith is a so-called wolf biologist. He's in Yellowstone. He's finding wolves. It's on paper, man. You don't need to bring wolves in because Keith, one of the government's biologists, told us. But Keith's formula for counting how many elk are killed by wolves, they used his formula. It's called the Keith's 1982 formula for how many uh, elk are killed by wolves, and he
Yeah.
said 16.3 or something like that. If you go deeper and you look at the peer review process and you look at all the peer reviews, everybody called him a liar. They're like, he's insane. And so what did Ed Bangs do? He assembled the Delphi 15
Right, right. I
and the
remember
Delphi
that.
15. So I thank God bless Bob Fanning. He
Yeah.
got a hold of their paperwork, and I have it. And the Delphi 15, all the biologists, I have their names. Who did the study? None of them were wolf biologists. None of them. There wasn't a single wolf biologist when they decided to do this, except for Meach.
Wow.
And Meach told him, he goes, you know, we don't really have that much information on wolves. Meach spent like 2 or 3 weeks a year in the Arctic studying wolves, and he was the world's most foremost wolf biologist.
Expert, yeah.
So when someone tells me I'm not qualified to talk about wolves, okay, then neither were your guys.
Right.
So
Well,
it's okay.
the judge Malloy, where they take, he's out of the courthouse in Missoula, where they take all their lawsuits, and I used to call him Judge Whopper because of the whoppers they told him that he believed. And
He's a part of it.
yeah, I mean it was a game.
They say that, well, he is the apparatus. He's the one. So here's these lawyers, and we've seen them going in and out of the courthouse over the years, you know, over delisting.
Mm-hmm.
They come in their $5,000 suits, driving BMWs and Porsches and stuff, and there's 3 or 4 of them. That's all there is in the office. You would think Defenders of Wildlife and Wild Earth Guardians was this huge organization. It's not. They're all lawyers. It's just a little small office. I think, oh gosh, there's another one in Helena that's super bad. But they just handpicked that judge.
Oh, absolutely.
And so the apparatus just keeps them funded. So equal access to justice kicks in. They get all their legal fees paid for. The keychain and calendar sales stuff, that's like a sideline.
Oh, absolutely. And even the donations that they get by, you know, with their playful forest dog propaganda.
Yeah.
I mean, it might help finance their Washington D.C. lobbying arms, but you know that's not their bread and butter.
No, their bread and butter is the Equal Access to Justice Act,
and it's the American taxpayer.
Mm-hmm. And we're funding our own destruction.
Funding our own destruction.